My family laughed when I inherited my grandparents' old house. Years later, its value skyrocketed and they wanted me to share. When I refused, they tried to break in and ended up getting arrested. I'm 28 male and I need to give you some backstory because this level of entitlement doesn't just happen overnight. My family comes from Italian origins. My grandparents Enzo and Rosa came to Georgia in 1962 with nothing but suitcases and stubbornness. They bought this old Victorian house in Covington. Spent 40 years putting everything they had into that place. 4 bedrooms, wraparound porch, hand-carved railings Grandpa made himself. The man could fix anything. Grandma kept a vegetable garden out back that fed half the neighborhood. They raised my father in that house, watched him grow up and move away and slowly stopped visiting. And then they got old there together while everyone else forgot about them. When they died 6 months apart because Grandma refused to live without Grandpa. The estate got split according to their will. My sister Katerina got $95,000 in cash from the life insurance policy. I got the house. Everyone acted like Katerina had won the lottery. See, the house had been falling apart for 15 years by then. Grandpa got too old to maintain it. And my father Victor couldn't be bothered to drive 20 minutes to help his own parents. He was too busy running his insurance agency in Newton County. Too busy pretending he came from money instead of from immigrants who busted their backs their whole lives. By the time I inherited it, the place was condemned. I walked through it for the first time after probate and nearly fell through the kitchen floor. Black mold in every bathroom so thick it looked like velvet growing on the walls. A foundation crack running the length of the house that you could fit your fist into. Knob and tube wiring from 1920 that the inspector said was one bad day away from burning the whole block down. Squirrels had basically set up shop in the attic. The back porch had collapsed entirely, just a pile of lumber and rust. The roof leaked in 14 places. The city had already sent notices threatening demolition if someone didn't bring it up to code. The appraised value at probate was $68,000, and most of that was the quarter acre it sat on. The structure itself was worth negative money. You'd have to pay a contractor 6 figures just to tear it down safely. Katerina took her cash and laughed a full head-back cackle. Have fun with your haunted mansion, Matteo. I'll be at the Audi dealership. My mother patted her arm. You made the smart choice, honey. My father just looked at me and shook his head. Should have pushed for the cash split. Now you're stuck with that money pit. I didn't respond. I just looked at the deed in my hands and thought about Grandpa's face the last time I'd visited him. How he'd grabbed my wrist and said, "You're the only one, Matteo, the only one who understands." None of them got it. They thought Grandpa had screwed me. They thought he'd lost his mind at the end and made a mistake. But he knew exactly what he was doing. He left me that house because I was the only one in the family who actually cared about it. I was the kid who sat on his porch at 12 years old, learning how to refinish wood while he told stories about the old country. I was the teenager who drove down from Atlanta every other weekend to mow his lawn and check his pilot light. I was the adult who spent his vacation days cleaning out their gutters while my sister posted beach selfies from Destin. Katerina didn't even come to his funeral. She was in Nashville for a bachelorette party and said she couldn't get a flight back. That was garbage. I checked. There were 12 available flights that day. She just didn't want to ruin her weekend. So when Grandpa left me that rotting pile of problems instead of the easy cash, he was sending a message. He trusted me to save what my father had walked away from. I quit my apartment lease in Atlanta. I moved into a tent in the backyard because the house wasn't safe to live in, and I got to work. 3 years, every weekend, every vacation day, every penny I made as a structural engineer at a consulting firm in Atlanta. I learned plumbing from YouTube videos. I taught myself electrical from library books. I ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches while I saved up for the foundation repair that cost me $32,000 I didn't have. I took out a loan against my 401k. I sold my truck and bought a 15-year-old pickup that burned oil but ran. Where was my family during all this telling me I was an idiot? My father said I should sell the dump to a developer for whatever they'd offer and cut my losses. My mother said I was wasting my life on a pile of old wood. Katerina said nothing at all because she hadn't spoken to me directly in 2 years. She communicated through my parents like I was some foreign country she needed interpreters for. Fast forward to now. The appraisal notification hit my inbox. $485,000. I read it 3 times. Then I walked through the house I had rebuilt with my own 2 hands and started grinning. Original hardwood floors restored and refinished until they had that nice honey gold look. The clawfoot tub I'd salvaged from a demolition site in Dakar for $60 and spent 3 weekends refinishing. Custom kitchen cabinets I'd built myself because contractor quotes started at $18,000. A wraparound porch that matched the original exactly because I'd found Grandpa's blueprints in a water-damaged box in the attic. It was beautiful. It was mine. I had earned every square inch of it. And by Friday, my family showed up to collect. I pulled into my driveway after work to find my father's black Cadillac parked in my spot. Not on the street. In my spot right in front of the porch steps like he owned the place. My mother's Lexus was behind it. Katerina's white Mercedes was on the lawn. They were already inside. I'd given my mother the code to the smart lock 8 months earlier when I had rotator cuff surgery and needed someone to check on the house while I recovered. I'd asked her to water the plants. She did it once, complained it was too far to drive, and then stopped coming. But she'd never deleted the code from her phone. Of course she hadn't. I walked into my home to find all three of them set up like they were about to interview me. My father sat at the head of my dining table, my mother perched in the chair closest to him, her face arranged in that expression of wounded concern. And Katerina was sprawled on my couch with her Gucci sneakers on my cushions, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up when I walked in. Didn't acknowledge I existed. Just kept thumbing at the screen with those acrylic nails. I set my keys on the counter. My father launched directly into it. He started talking about family responsibility. About how Grandma and Grandpa intended for the estate to be divided equally. About how it was morally wrong for one grandchild to do well while another struggled. About how he'd done some research on home equity loans, and the house could easily support a withdrawal of $200,000 at current rates. He said I should take out the loan, give $100,000 to Katerina, and keep the rest for myself as compensation for my labor. He said he'd already talked to a loan officer at his bank. He said the paperwork could be done in 2 weeks. He said it like he was presenting a business proposal, like we were negotiating a contract, like he hadn't just walked into my house uninvited to tell me what to do with my own property. And if I say no, his jaw tightened. This isn't a negotiation, Mateo. This is what's happening in my house that I own, that I rebuilt with my own hands. You rebuilt it with family money, family property. I owe you nothing. I said it flat. Get out. The room went dead silent. My mother's face crumpled. Katerina looked up from her phone for the first time. I asked which grandchild was struggling because from where I stood, I was the one who ate ramen for 8 months while saving for foundation work. I was the one who took on debt I'm still paying off. Katerina finally looked up from her phone. She said I was being dramatic, that I chose to do all that nobody made me live like a homeless person for some old house, that I could have sold the dump to a developer like Dad suggested and split the money with her like a normal sibling would. I asked her what she did with her 95 grand. She told me that wasn't the point. I told her it was exactly the point. She blew through her inheritance in 18 months. The Audi Q5 that she totaled 8 months after buying it and replaced with a Mercedes. The apartment in Midtown Atlanta that cost $2,400 a month. The trips to Miami and Nashville and Cabo. The designer bags and shoes and jewelry I'd seen on her Instagram. That was her choice. My mother started crying. The performance kind. She said that Katerina was drowning in credit card debt. That as the older sibling I had an obligation to help. That this was what Grandma and Grandpa would have wanted. I told her to stop using dead people to guilt trip me. If they wanted Katerina to have the house, they would have left it to her. They didn't. They left her cash because they knew she'd blow through anything else. My father stood up. Victor is 6'2", 240 pounds, a former college linebacker who never got over the glory days. He spent 30 years running his insurance agency through sheer force of personality intimidation, yelling, making people feel small and stupid until they stopped arguing and did what he wanted. He told me I was going to take out that loan and give my sister what she deserved. He said it like it was already decided. I laughed in his face. You're delusional. Excuse me. You heard me. Get out of my house before I call the sheriff and have you removed. My father stepped toward me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. You ungrateful little, finish that sentence. Please give me a reason. We stood there for a long moment, him deciding if he wanted to swing, me hoping he would. Finally, my mother grabbed his arm and whispered something, and the moment passed. He called me an ungrateful disappointment on his way out. Said he should have known I'd turn out selfish. Said my grandparents would be ashamed of the man I'd become. I told him Grandpa left me this house specifically so it wouldn't end up in his hands. My father's face went purple, his shoulders tensed. But my mother grabbed his arm and whispered something. He just pointed at me with one finger and said this wasn't over, that I had no idea what I'd started. They left. Katerina's shoulder checked me on the way out like we were in middle school. I changed the lock code. Then I sat in my kitchen and drank 3 glasses of water because I don't drink, and I needed to do something with my hands. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was scared, because I was thinking ahead. I knew my father. He didn't make threats he wasn't willing to follow through on. Whatever was coming, I needed to be ready. The lawyer's letter arrived 4 days later. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. The envelope was thick and expensive, which told me my father had already spent real money on this. The letter accused me of fraud. It claimed I had conspired during probate to undervalue the property for my own benefit. It claimed there was an implied verbal agreement that I would share the house's equity with my sister once it was renovated. It demanded I establish something called a constructive trust that would give Katerina a 50% ownership stake in my home. If I didn't comply, they would file a lawsuit and put a lien on the property that would prevent me from selling, refinancing, or doing anything else with it until the matter was resolved, which could take years. I read the letter twice. Then I called the only person I knew who might understand how insane this was. Damien had been my best friend since sophomore year. We'd gone to Georgia Tech together, pulled all-nighters together, helped each other move apartments more times than either of us could count. He was also a contracts attorney who'd recently left his firm to start his own practice in Dakar. He wasn't a real estate litigator, but he knew people who were. We met at a wing joint in Dakar. I laid everything out: the inheritance, the renovation, the ambush, the letter. He read the demand twice, then set it down. He told me the legal argument was garbage. Constructive trust required evidence of an agreement, verbal or written, that I would hold property for someone else's benefit. There was no such agreement. I had text messages from 3 years ago where Katerina explicitly told me to enjoy my dump because she was glad she got the cash. The will was clear. The probate was closed. The appraisal was done by an independent firm appointed by the court. On paper, this case was a slam dunk. I should win easily. But Damon also told me that family lawsuits were different. They got emotional. They got ugly. Judges sometimes tried to split the baby just to make everyone go away. If my father was willing to spend money on lawyers, he could keep me tied up in court for 3 or 4 years. Even when I won, and I would win, I'd spend 50 grand or more in legal fees. I asked him what I should do. He said I needed someone meaner than me. He knew a real estate litigator named Samantha who had a reputation for being ruthless. She didn't take cases she couldn't win, and she didn't lose cases she took. If my family wanted a fight, she was the one to have in my corner. I called her office the next morning. Samantha worked out of a converted Victorian in downtown Dakar. She was maybe 50, and the kind of stare that made you want to check if you'd done something wrong. I brought everything. The original, the probate records, 3 binders of receipts from the renovation organized by date and category, before and after photographs, text messages, emails, every piece of documentation I had put together over 3 years of working on that house. She spent 90 minutes going through it, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When she finished, she looked at me and asked one question. "Who was the executive of your grandparents' estate, my father?" She smiled. "And he signed off on the original appraisal. The $68,000 valuation." "Yes." "Perfect." She leaned back in her chair. "And your father just screwed himself. He certified that appraisal was accurate. Now he's claiming it was fraud. You understand what that means? He incriminated himself. He buried himself. The question is, do you want to bury him deeper, or do you want to let him crawl out?" I thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. Bury him. She explained that my father, as executive, had signed off on the original appraisal. He had certified to the probate court that the division of assets was fair and accurate. He had taken a legal oath that he was administering the estate properly. If he was now claiming the appraisal was fraudulent, he was admitting to one of 2 things. Either he committed fraud himself by knowingly approving a false valuation, or he was negligent in his fiduciary duty by failing to properly oversee the process. Either way, he had just incriminated himself. If we pushed back hard enough, his own lawsuit could turn into criminal charges against him. I asked her what we should do. She said we counterattack, make them regret putting any of this in writing. Within a week, she filed a motion for declaratory judgment, affirming my sole ownership of the property. She also sent a letter to my family's lawyer that was 11 pages of legal destruction. It explained in detail exactly how pursuing this claim would expose my father to criminal liability for fiduciary fraud. The letter suggested that perhaps everyone should step back, take a breath, and reconsider the wisdom of continuing down this path. The silence lasted about 10 days. I spent those days installing a security camera system around the property. 4 cameras with night vision and motion activation. Cloud backup to a server. I had a feeling I was going to need it. I was right. Wade was a retired Marine who lived in the Blue Craftsman 2 doors down with his wife Ellen. We'd become friends over the past year. I'd helped him track down parts for his Mustang restoration. He'd helped me hang drywall when I hurt my shoulder. He was 63, built like a refrigerator. Ellen was sweet, always bringing over banana bread when she made a batch. The kind of neighbor who remembered everyone's birthday. WDE was the one who called me at work on a Wednesday afternoon. He said there was a moving truck parked in my driveway. 2 guys in work clothes were loading furniture from my house. My father was on the porch directing traffic. I told my project manager I had a family emergency and left. I drove home doing 20 over the speed limit. When I pulled up, I found exactly what Wade had described: a rental truck. 2 guys in gray jumpsuits carrying my couch down the porch steps. My father standing at the door with a clipboard literally checking items off a list like he was running an office move. I found out later that my mother had apparently tried a few combinations on the lock code until one worked. Lazy security on my part. I only changed 2 digits. Wouldn't make that mistake again. Wade was on the sidewalk with his arms crossed. He'd positioned himself near the end of the driveway, close enough that anyone trying to leave would have to deal with him first. I got out of my truck and walked up the driveway. "What the heck do you think you're doing?" My father didn't even look at me, just kept checking his clipboard. "Recovering family assets. Keep loading, boys. Put my couch down now." One of the movers hesitated. My father snapped at him to keep moving. "You have a court order," I asked. "It's being processed." "So that's a no." I turned to the movers. "You touch one more thing in my house, I file criminal charges. Burglary, theft, your company loses its license. Your choice." The mover looked at my father, then at me, then at Wade, who had walked closer. The mover sat down his end of the couch. His partner agreed. They got in the cab of the truck, started the engine, and tried to pull out. WDE stepped directly into their path and didn't move. The mover honked. Wade just stared at him. I told him it was okay. Let them go. He stepped aside and the truck pulled away. I got the company name and license plate on video. My father finally turned to look at me. His face was red. He said I was making a huge mistake, that he was trying to handle this quietly as a family matter, but if I wanted to do it the hard way, he would bury me. I pulled out my phone and showed him the security camera footage. 4 angles, everything recorded: the illegal entry, the attempted theft, his admission that he didn't have a court order. All of it was already uploaded to the cloud. I asked him if he wanted to keep making threats or if he wanted to leave before I called the sheriff. He left, but Katerina showed up about 30 seconds later. She must have been waiting around the corner watching on her phone, because she pulled her Mercedes onto the lawn again and jumped out. She saw the couch still sitting on the grass. She saw our father's Escalade pulling away and she started screaming at me. She called me every name she could think of, and my sister had a solid vocabulary when she was angry. Then she got specific. "You manipulated Grandpa when he was dying. You poisoned him against us. You probably rewrote the will yourself. You didn't come to his funeral, Katerina. You were in Nashville living it up at some club." "That's not—" I couldn't get a flight. There were 12 flights that day. I checked. She went quiet. Her face twisted into something ugly. "You always thought you were better than me. Always the good grandson. The perfect son. Meanwhile, you're just a thief who got lucky. Get off my property. You've got 10 seconds. Or what? Or I have you arrested for trespassing." I'm sure Preston's family would love to hear about that. The color drained from her face just for a second. Then she recovered and said she would make me regret this, that she would ruin my reputation, that she would make sure I never had another peaceful day. I told her everyone who mattered already knew exactly who both of us were. I told her to look around at where she was standing on the lawn of a house she had laughed at 3 years ago, trying to steal furniture from a brother she hadn't spoken to in 2 years, while her marriage to a trust fund kid slowly fell apart around her. I told her the only reputation getting wrecked today was hers. She didn't have a response to that. She just stood there, mouth open, trying to find words that wouldn't come. Then she got back in her car and drove away, tires spinning on my grass. Wade watched her go, then turned to me and said, that was the most messed up family he'd ever seen. I thanked him for backing me up. He said, that's what neighbors were for, and went back to working on his Mustang like nothing had happened. The movers had scratched up my hardwood floor. 6 months of finish work ruined in 20 minutes. I spent the rest of the night sanding and resealing. It was better than thinking about what my family had become, or maybe what they had always been. 2 weeks after the moving truck incident, Damon called me with news. He'd been doing some digging. Something about my sister's story wasn't adding up. She claimed she was broke, drowning in debt, couldn't afford rent, but she was driving a new Mercedes. She was still posting vacation photos from places that weren't cheap. She was wearing expensive clothes and accessories. So he started pulling threads, making phone calls, checking public records, and what he found was interesting. "You sitting down?" Damon asked when he called. "Should I be?" "Your sister got married 14 months ago. Courthouse ceremony, Fulton County. Guess who the witnesses were?" "No idea. Victor and Donna Ferrante." I was quiet for a long moment. They knew. This whole time they knew. It gets better. Her husband is Preston Whitmore the first fourth. As in Whitmore Development, as in shopping centers all over North Georgia. She married money, she married a trust fund, and the trust has conditions. If his wife has assets, he loses his allowance. So guess who's been pretending she came from nothing? The pieces clicked into place. The secret marriage, the hidden in-laws, the desperate grab for cash that couldn't be traced. "She's not broke," I said. "She's running a scam." Bingo. Katerina wasn't broke. She was married. She'd gotten married 14 months ago in a quiet courthouse ceremony in Fulton County. No announcement, no reception, no family present, except for 2 witnesses, our father Victor and our mother Donna. They had kept it secret from everyone else, including me. Her husband's name was Preston. His family owned a commercial real estate development company that had strip malls and shopping centers all over North Georgia. Preston himself wasn't particularly accomplished. He had a business degree he'd never used and a lifestyle funded entirely by family money, but his trust fund paid him somewhere around $8,000 a month. The marriage had been kept quiet for a specific reason. Damon had a contact at a family law firm in Atlanta who owed him a favor. Through that contact, he learned that the Whitmore Family Trust had conditions. If Preston married without family approval, his monthly allowance got cut in half. If his wife had significant assets or came from a family with significant assets, the allowance could be eliminated entirely. The trust lawyers did annual financial reviews of all beneficiaries and their spouses. Katerina had told the Whitmore family that she came from nothing, that her parents were working-class insurance people who lived paycheck to paycheck, that she had no inheritance, no family wealth, no assets of any kind. She said her father's business was struggling and her mother had health problems. She painted a picture of herself as a scrappy, self-made woman who had overcome tough circumstances to build a career in marketing. All of it was lies. My father's agency was profitable. My mother played tennis 3 times a week and had never been seriously ill, and Katerina had burned through $95,000 in inheritance money like it was nothing. She had invented an entire fake background to marry into money. She had lied her way into a wealthy husband. And now she wanted me to give her $100,000 in cash so she could have it without disclosing it to her husband's family attorneys. If they found out she'd received that kind of money, they'd start asking questions. Questions that would unravel the entire mess of lies she'd put together. It wasn't about our grandparents' intentions. It was about my sister running a con on her in-laws and needing me to help her hide the evidence. My own parents had helped her do this. They had attended her secret wedding. They had lied to the Whitmores about our family's financial situation. They had enabled every step of this fraud, and then they had the nerve to call me selfish for not playing along. I sat with that information for a long time. I thought about calling my parents, confronting them, asking how they could lie to my face, accuse me of fraud, try to steal my furniture while hiding their daughter's secret marriage from me. But I already knew what they'd say. They'd turn it around on me. So I called Samantha. I told her what Damon had found. I asked her if we could use it. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said yes. This changed everything. If my sister was claiming financial hardship as the basis for her constructive trust demand, she would have to prove it under oath with documentation. And if she lied about her marital status or her actual financial situation, that was perjury. Samantha filed a motion to compel full financial disclosure. Every bank account, every credit card, every asset, everything. My family's lawyer tried to block it. Samantha tore his arguments apart. The judge granted the motion and scheduled a deposition. The trap was set. The deposition was scheduled for a Thursday morning at Samantha's office. Their lawyer looked like he was in over his head and knew it. My dad and Katerina showed up. My mother didn't come. I sat in the corner of the conference room and watched Samantha work. She started gentle questions about Katerina's living situation, her income, her monthly expenses. She let Katerina tell her story about struggling to make rent, about being behind on credit cards, about the stress of watching her brother live in a mansion while she could barely afford groceries. Katerina was good at this. She had practiced. Her voice caught at the right moments. Her eyes got watery. She was playing the victim role she had been doing her entire life. Then Samantha asked about her marital status. Ms. Ferrante, are you currently married? Her face went still just for a second. A flicker of something that might have been panic before she pulled herself together. I don't see how that's relevant. Samantha pulled out the marriage certificate, slid it across the table. Are you married to Preston Whitmore? Katerina looked at her lawyer. He looked at my father. Yes, Katerina finally said. I'm married, and you didn't disclose this in your original filings because it's a private matter. A private matter. Samantha nodded. Let's talk about your husband's income. That's when things got ugly. Samantha asked about Preston's income, about the family trust, about the monthly distributions, about the financial disclosure requirements in the prenuptial agreement. Katerina's lawyer objected, said this was beyond the scope of the proceeding. Samantha said it was directly relevant to the claim of financial hardship. If the plaintiff was receiving significant financial support through her spouse, that contradicted her assertion that she needed emergency funds from the defendant. The objection was overruled. Katerina had to answer. It took her a long time. She tried to be vague. Samantha pinned her down on every detail. How much did Preston receive monthly? Approximately $8,000. Did Katerina have access to those funds? She lived in a house Preston owned and drove a car he leased. Did she have any personal expenses that weren't covered by her husband's income? She hesitated, said she had credit card debt from before the marriage. Samantha asked her to specify the amount. Katerina said she wasn't sure exactly. Samantha pulled out the financial disclosure forms Katerina had submitted with the original lawsuit. The forms where she had sworn under penalty of perjury that she was carrying $67,000 in credit card debt and had no significant assets or income. Samantha asked if those figures were accurate as of today. Katerina looked at her lawyer. He nodded. She said, yes, they were accurate. Samantha produced a folder of credit card statements, bank records, financial documents she had subpoenaed from 3 different institutions. The records showed that Preston had paid off $45,000 of Katerina's credit card debt 3 days after their wedding as a gift. The remaining balance across all her accounts was currently $11,800. Not nothing, but a long way from the drowning in debt story she had been selling. More than that, the records showed regular deposits into Katerina's personal checking account from a joint account she shared with Preston. Between $1,000 and $2,000 a month every month for the past 14 months, money that had never been disclosed, money that made her claims of poverty look like what they were, a lie designed to justify stealing from me. Samantha asked why Katerina had represented her debt as $67,000, when the actual current amount was under $12,000. She asked why she had failed to disclose her marriage, her husband's income, or the joint account. Katerina's lawyer called for a break. They were gone for over an hour. When they came back, Katerina looked like someone had slapped her. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to quit on the spot. My father sat rigidly in his chair, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. The lawyer said they were withdrawing all claims, dismissing the lawsuit with prejudice, meaning it could never be refiled, no settlement, no conditions complete, and total surrender. He asked that we agree not to pursue perjury charges for the lies in the financial disclosures. Samantha looked at me. I thought about it. I want a written apology signed by all 3 of them, admitting they made false claims and tried to defraud me. My father spoke for the first time since the deposition started. Absolutely not. I will never, Victor. Samantha cut him off. Your daughter just committed perjury on the record. Your wife helped her commit marriage fraud. You attempted burglary with witnesses. I can have all 3 of you in front of a judge by Friday. So you'll sign whatever my client wants you to sign, or I'll make sure the next 3 years of your life are miserable. Are we clear? The silence stretched. My father's face went through about 6 different shades of red. Fine, he said. Give me the paper. They signed the apology. My father walked out without looking at me, but Katerina stopped at the door. This isn't over, she said. I will never forgive you for this. I looked at her. The golden child, the one who got everything and still wanted more. Katerina, I don't need your forgiveness. She slammed the door behind her. I filed for a restraining order the next week. I had more than enough documentation. Samantha handled the paperwork. The hearing took less than an hour. The judge granted a protective order that prohibited my father, my mother, and my sister from coming within 500 feet of me or my property. They couldn't contact me by any means. They couldn't send other people to contact me on their behalf. Any violation would result in immediate arrest. They didn't violate it. What they did instead was fall apart. Damien kept me updated because he found the whole situation entertaining. My father's insurance agency took a major hit when word spread about the restraining order. In a town the size of Covington, news travels fast. When people heard that Victor Ferrand's own son had to get court protection from his family, they started asking questions. What kind of man treats his kids so badly that a judge has to step in? 3 of his biggest clients left within 4 months. He had to let 2 employees go and move to a smaller office space. The Rotary Club quietly stopped inviting him to speak at events. His reputation, which he had spent 30 years building, fell apart in less than a year. My mother stopped showing her face at her garden club meetings. Too many sideways looks, too many whispered conversations that stopped when she walked into the room. She told people I had been manipulated by a girlfriend who turned me against my family, which was funny because I didn't have a girlfriend. I had a dog. Her name was Rosie Australian Shepherd mix with 1 blue eye and 1 brown eye. I found her at the animal shelter 2 months after the restraining order was finalized. She'd been there for 6 weeks because she was missing part of her left ear, and people always wanted puppies with no visible damage. She sat in her kennel and looked at me with the most tired, hopeful eyes I'd ever seen. I took her home that day. She turned out to be the best decision I'd made since working on that house. She just wanted to go for walks and sleep on the couch and bark at squirrels in the backyard. Always waits for me by the door and starts jumping once she sees me coming back from work. Katerina's marriage lasted another 8 months. Preston's family eventually found out the truth. Not about the lawsuit, about everything. The lies about her background, the hidden debt, the secret settlement with me. One of the family trust attorneys found the signed apology during a routine records review. The prenup had a fraud clause. When they used it, Katerina got nothing, just her clothes and whatever she could fit in her car. Last Damon heard she was living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Marietta working at a property management company. Not Mercedes anymore, not vacation photos, just dealing with the consequences of her own choices. WDE finished restoring his Mustang about 6 months after everything settled. Cherry red with white racing stripes. Beautiful machine. He lets me drive it sometimes when I help him with projects around his house. Ellen still brings me banana bread whenever she makes a batch. They've become something like the family I should have had. Damien comes down to Covington every few weeks. We grill steaks in the backyard. He says I'm his favorite client because I actually pay my referral fees. The house is still standing, still looks great. I added a vegetable garden last spring in the backyard right where Grandma used to grow her tomatoes 50 years ago. I found photos of her garden in a water-damaged album in the attic. Same location, same southern exposure, same wooden stakes for the plants. I like to think she'd be proud. I like to think Grandpa would walk through the rooms and recognize what I was trying to do. Save something that mattered. Sometimes I think about my family. I wonder if they ever realized what they lost. Not the money, not the house me. I would have helped them if they'd ever treated me like I mattered. But they didn't. They treated me like something to be used. And when I said no, they called me selfish. I'm sitting on my porch right now. Rosie's asleep at my feet. The sun is going down over Covington. My neighbor across the street is watering his lawn. Kids are riding bikes. It's quiet. Life's finally peaceful.